Now we're going to look at how to sync up multiple tracks together. Now you want to do this when you have multiple recordings of one student's performance. Now if you remember at the beginning of this video, there was a student that had two different recordings of her performance. One was an overhead view of her hands, and then the other was a side view. This is an instance where you would want to take both of those tracks and sync them up so that you can cut between the two to give different perspectives and angle and to add interest. So let's go back up to our media bin, and we're going to scroll down here to these two files here. This is the student that has the two different perspectives, and so we're going to pull those down and work with them together. So we will take this clip right here, and we are going to put it down on track 1 just like we have with the other video clips of the other recital pieces. But then instead of putting the next clip to the side of this one, we're actually going to take it and pull it down and put it on this track 2 above, which will allow us to toggle between the two perspectives of this piece. Now the first thing we need to do is to sync up both of these clips so that they both are playing at the same time. So if we hit play right now with them lined up as they are, you're going to notice that they're not synced up.
And then I'm going to hit record on
I'm going to be playing
GarageBand.
You're everything recording?
Yep.
Today I'm going to be playing Overflows in here.
So you can see that they were not synced up at all. There were parts when one track you could hear playing, while in the other track we could hear the introduction to the piece. So we have some work here to ensure that they get synced up. Now the closer you start each camera recording at the same time, the closer these will be synced up. But sometimes even that, if it's even just a couple of frames off, you're going to hear at least an echo. So you may have heard when I was playing this two distinct claps in these clips. Those claps are actually a single clap, and it was included to help us sync up these tracks. The way this helps us is because it's such a short, loud sound, that sound wave is going to show up as kind of a high needle-like structure. So if we go over here, we can see that this here is the clap for this track, and then the clap on this track is way up here at the beginning. So if I pull this down to line those up, then it will probably be a little bit closer to what we need. Let's listen.
Today I'm going to be playing Overflows in here.
Okay, that is really close. I think it's slightly off, so let's just see if we can fine-tune it just a little bit more. To do that, we can go over to this slide bar here, and this allows us to effectively zoom in or out of the tracks that we're working on. So if we pull this up, you can see how it expands and gives us more precision as to exactly where we are at. So these are actually lined up pretty good. I'm going to come in all the way so that we can see. They're a little bit off now, as you can see. So I can just take this one and move it over, and then that's pretty good. I don't think we're going to get much better than that. So let's go back. We'll come back out a little bit so we can see the rest of the timeline, and then let's play this one more time.
Today I'm going to be playing Overflows in here.
Okay, the sound is now synced up, and that means the video is also as well. So after you've got all your cameras rolling and recording, go ahead and you can give a sharp clap, or if you have some other method like ringing a bell or something, just make sure that the sound wave is singular enough that you can pull it out from the rest of the sound waves. That's why a clap works really good. You can really see how that stands out. Okay, so we've got the sound and video synced up, but now if you'll notice, Because these tracks are laid over each other, they also appear laid over here. So we're going to need to do some work to get these to a state to where we can just see one and not the other one, and that then we can switch between the two. So the first thing to understand is the top track is always going to be the one that's going to be overlaid on the one below it. So this top track corresponds to this track here. That's why it's blocking the other view. Now, because it's a landscape orientation being shown in portrait mode, we can still see some of the other video behind it. But if we move this around, for example, you can see more of the video behind it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get this oriented right, this video. We want it to be turned around so that it's in a landscape orientation. To do that, we come to this little circle here. You'll see that off of the main center circle, which is denoted by an X. If you come out to the circle that's attached to it, it will turn a different color, and then you can click on that, and while you're clicking and holding, you can start to move it until you get it into the right orientation. Then you can take this and move it up like we have with the others and size it like we did earlier. Okay, now it's completely on top of this. Track 2 video clip is completely covering track 1. That's okay. We're going to use our trim and cut functions to help us toggle between the two views. But before we do that, let's take a look at this top track. Now, it's all personal preference as to how you want to do this, but in this case, you've got a lot of space here that's just a keyboard and a mouse, and it's kind of distracting. So if you want to, you can come up to this icon right here, and this is the crop mode. If you click on that, this box around it will turn from white to blue, and then you can grab on one of these squares and pull it down, and it will effectively crop out parts of your video so that you could crop it down to something like this. Now you don't have half of the screen taken up by that keyboard and mouse. If you do this though, you'll need to lay down a background track beneath it so that you don't see the other track behind it. So in essence, you would come and add a track in between these tracks, which we can do by coming over here, and then we can right click on this track 2 and insert track. We can say insert a track below. That'll put in a brand new clean open track, and then you can go ahead and put in a background. To add a background file, you can go up to the media bin and upload a background there, or you can go to the library. Now the library is a place where you can store files that you're going to use over and over in your recordings. So that might be a studio logo, it might be a background, it might be title cards. So if we go to the library, you can see I've already got a couple of background screens. I've got a black screen and a blue screen. If I pull one of these down and put it under this clip and then extend it to the length of the clip, you can now see that it covers up track 1 back here, but it does not cover up track 3 now. So they are layered with this black background sandwiched between the two. Now you go back up here, we're in crop mode, so we need to go back to the edit mode. It'll turn back white, and then we pull this over, and then you've just got that top track, and you're not seeing the track below it. And you have also cut off all this excess part of the video that was kind of distracting. Okay, the next step is to now switch between the two tracks. So I don't want to start out with this track. I want to see this student's face as she introduces her piece. So we're going to scrub back to the beginning, and here's the beginning of this one, but you'll see there's still, on this one, we had some extra footage that we don't need. This camera got started recording just a little bit before this one. So we'll go back, and we can see we're right here on the edge of this one. We're going to go back and use what we just learned, use the split function. Again, we can go up here to the icon, or we can use our keyboard shortcut. I'll just go ahead and click on the icon here, and now we've got that split. Now if we pull this back in, or zoom out, and then we can trim this one as well. Now we can go and get rid of these by hitting delete, and now everything has a clean start here. Okay, I want to start with this lower track, but this upper track is on top of it. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can take your cursor and move it up here until it has this cross with two arrows on the side. That means that you can take the edge of this track and effectively lengthen it or shorten it by moving it back left and right. It's essentially like trimming, only it's more of a rolling trim where you can move it along and trim while you're moving it. So in this case, we could roll this one back a little bit, and then we can come back here. Now here's the problem. We've got this black screen still on top of this one, this track 1. So we're going to take it and roll it back as well. Now we can see the student and her face. We're on this track 1. Nothing is impeding it above, and we can start out. Let's see how this looks.
Today I'm going to be playing River Falls in You.
Okay, that looks good. The student let us know what she's playing and is ready to play. Now at this point you could stay on this track a little bit and let her play here rather than cut immediately to the other view, or you can cut to the other view, whatever is your style. The only recommendation I would have is don't cut too much, because it can start to feel a little too busy or a little too overwhelming. So I would say use the cut sparingly, maybe where there's a natural transition taking place. I'm going to want to stay on this track a little bit, so I'm going to take these, and you can select both of these by clicking in this just black area and holding down and going over both tracks, and they will light up yellow. And then you'd only have to pull one and they'll both pull back. So let's see how that looks. Before we go further though, let's get rid of this clap at the beginning. We're not going to want to have that on there. Just as soon as that's over, you can come right in here. Again, select, trim, I'm using Command T again, and then delete. And while we're at it, we can use one of the other effects we've learned how to do, and that's adding a fade. We come back up here to transition. Here's fade, because we've already typed fade up here and it remembered it. We'll pull this down and we have a fade. Now let's see how we're doing.
Today I'm going to be playing River Falls in You.
Okay, that was pretty good. It fades in, we hear her announce her piece, and she starts playing. Now you'll notice there is a transition there and a pause. That actually might be a good place to bring in the other perspective. So let's put the playhead here to kind of mark where we want it to be. And then we will pull this back. Again, we could have selected them both and done it simultaneously. Now we've got this back on top, so let's see how that looks. So there's a transition. We didn't have a fade or anything. It was a hard transition, but it did transition between the two perspectives. Once we decide where we want our cuts between the two different perspectives, we can then go in and do some additional work to get some smooth transitions. But before we do that, let's make one more cut just so we have a couple to work with. So we'll play through this. And again, another pause and a transition. Now, normally I would not say to cut this often, but at the very beginning or in these areas where it kind of naturally feels like it's a good place to do it, it's okay. There's no hard rule as to when you should do a trim or a cut. You can just decide that for your own personal preference. But I'll go ahead for now and make a cut again here, which means I can't roll this back or I'm going to lose all this. So what I do is I have the playhead where I want it to cut. I'm going to select by holding the mouse down and selecting over it. Again, hit Command T, that cuts it off. And now I can take these two, which are still highlighted, and roll them back. Let's roll them back to maybe about here. As you can kind of look at your sound and see that that might be another natural pause or transition. Okay, let's go to the beginning and see how this looks.
Today I'm going to be playing River Flows in You.
Okay, so you can see we had a couple of cuts that adds some interest, gives us different perspective. We get to see the student's face as well as her fingers, and it just adds overall interest. Now, one thing you may have noticed is in these parts where we had these other tracks stacked, the sound got a little more intense. And that's because we've got two cameras recording sound. And so now we're hearing sound from both cameras. Now it's the exact same sound, but because we've got two tracks with sound waves, we're basically hearing it twice. So really, to keep the sound more normalized, you're going to want to usually get rid of one of these sound tracks. And so we'll just keep this bottom one, since that's the one that we're not cutting up, we're cutting these others. And then we will just go up and get rid of the sound on this one. Now to do that, again, there's a couple of ways. You can do a keyboard shortcut by, on a Mac at least, hitting Control and then clicking on the track. It will then give you this window, and you can see right here there's a silence audio option. We can go ahead and click that. And you'll see the sound waves go away, and now you won't be able to hear the audio on that track. The other way you can do it is to go up to the menu, come up here to Edit, scroll down, and there's a silence audio function. Now you'll notice right now that it's grayed out because we already silenced it. Now what we have the option of doing is restoring the audio, which we can do here. And there it will come back. Now if we go back up to Edit, we can use the silence audio and it will go away. So that will help you keep your sound normalized by only having one soundtrack with the sound. Now let's just listen to that, and you'll see that even though it's silent here, you're still going to hear it here. And because each of these clips are synced up to the exact frame, you're not going to see any discrepancies between the audio and video from the two tracks. Not only can you silence the audio on a track that contains both video and audio like we just did, but you can also separate the audio and video into two individual tracks. One reason why you might want to do that is if you have a clip where you only want to use the audio and not the video. For example, you may decide that you just want the audio as a narration over some other video that you're showing, like B-roll or overlay footage. Another reason might be the video quality is just too poor to use, but you still want to use the audio component. And there are several other reasons why you might want to do this. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we've already silenced the audio on this clip. So let's come down here to this next clip. And we're going to separate the audio from the video. So to do this, we simply need to click on the track that has the audio and video that we want to separate. And again, using Control with the mouse click on a Mac or a right click on a PC, you will bring up this menu. And then we had silence audio here. Just above that, you'll find separate video and audio. Go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice that an extra track now was created. Now we have 4 tracks. And here is the video component that stayed on track 3. and then the audio component was separated and placed on a new track above. Now we have an audio track that's separate from everything else. And another reason you might want to do this is, let's say you want to create an intro or an outro for your recital, and maybe you want to use one of your students' compositions as the background music for the intro or outro. You could take this audio track, now separated from the video, and place it at the beginning or the end of the recital, and then have some overlay video with your intro or outro. So that's one other way you could use this feature. Now you can also go up to the menu under Edit, and again this same feature, separating audio and video, is right there, right above the silence audio. And once again, we can't highlight it because we've already separated the audio and video for this track that we've selected. But that is the other way that you can